Welcome to the ESCOM podcast. This is our security and compliance podcast created by Core to Cloud. I'm Kelly and I work at the marketing department.
And I'm Phil from the technical team, and we're going to take you through all our technology in a really interesting way.
Phil talks technical, while I keep it light-hearted with a selection of exciting guest speakers. Let's delve in. So, thank you, Barnaby, for joining us today. Let's kick off because Immersive Labs is actually quite new to us at Core to Cloud, so it'd be good to kind of, and anyone listening, if they aren't aware of Immersive Labs, to just give us a little bit of backstory, what you guys do, how it was founded, etc.
Yeah, of course. So we're a little bit different, actually. So we're not a sort of bog-standard cybersecurity company, as you would normally think. So we were founded about 4.5 years ago. So we were founded in 2017 by a chap called James Hadley, who's our now CEO. James was a security analyst in GCHQ for a number of years, and then moved into a cyber security instructor role where he was instructing graduates through the cyber summer school at GCHQ, which was a period of time over about 6 weeks where you would bring junior and upcoming cyber talent and train them in different areas. But during that process, he sort of realised that there was no way for him or now organisations to continually monitor the skills, knowledge and judgment of those individuals, because it was very traditional, right? You think about what training is and it's boring. It's typically boring. It's PowerPoint, it's multiple choice, it's Q&A. There's no way to evidence that capability on a continual basis. So we built the platform to allow individuals to evidence their capability right across the cyber spectrum and continually upskill themselves rather than go on a course or go and achieve a certification, because it's a point in time. It doesn't necessarily mean anything and it doesn't allow you to continually evidence your capability. So we sort of, tore up the rule book from a training perspective and said, well, certifications are all right, but how do you continually exercise and evidence your skills? So that's why we were born, because we're doing things a bit differently and we really are focusing on human capability.
Okay, because that's quite interesting, because I guess, like any job, how do you know if you're good at it, that you can do it, that if a problem arises that you're able to do it? I mean, obviously, Phil, you've gone through that career and learned how to do it and on the ground and things like that, but for your training, was it on learning on the job, I guess?
Yeah, it was very much classroom-based training, and then but obviously you do a classroom course for, say, 5 days, but then you weren't ready for the test at the end of it. You then had to go and do the hard work to get ready for the test, whereas this sounds like this will focus on what you actually need to do and actually need to learn. So if you want to learn something like PowerShell or different types of commands, you're actually, the best way of doing things is actually to do them. And that's the best way of learning. There's only so much you get from somebody talking at you. Exactly. So you actually need to try and do it to remember it. So I think it's jumping straight to that and letting you get hands-on and actually learn really useful skills.
Yeah, that's right. And we use an analogy actually around flight simulation. So if you're a pilot, you wouldn't just go and do a load of classroom training or read a load of textbooks or go and answer multiple choice questions. You go into a flight simulator and you would actually exercise your skills in a practical environment before you actually flew people across the world. So that's essentially what we're allowing cyber professionals to do, is to get hands-on and practical, so that if an organisation is breached or you continually need to protect yourself and against bad actors, then you have the skills to actually do that.
Okay, and I guess could organisations use it as part of a recruitment process as well as the training part?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've sort of touched on a sort of small area of what we do, and another piece is what we call screening. So I talked about certifications, and we're actually not against certifications, but we don't actually believe it's a true way to assess capability, because it is a piece of paper and it's a stamp in time. It's a point in time. It's not necessarily up to date, and cyber moves, as we know, very, very quickly. So what we allow organisations to do is, when they're hiring for cyber talent, is actually just ask them to go onto the Immersive Labs platform and just evidence capability. So if you're applying for a role as a SOC analyst, for example, we have a series of labs that are relevant to that role, so that candidate can go and prove that they have the capability to do the things required in that role. So it's completely removing any unconscious bias, because you're just solely looking at capability. You're not looking at maybe experience or certifications. You're just looking at what people can do. Can they perform in the role, and can they evidence that? And if you can, then great, like you're suitable for the role. You're not just looking at a piece of paper or or a CV.
And we all know there's a cybersecurity shortage, isn't there, of having the right talent for the jobs and being able to do that. And then also, I can't imagine, I mean, Phil, you'd understand more on this, of being able to recruit someone and know whether, I guess you're not going to know whether they're good at their job until it goes wrong. And actually, in cybersecurity, that's quite dangerous. Like flying a plane. Well, that's if they don't know how to fly the plane, that's a bit of a problem.
Yeah, I mean, people put a lot of, sometimes people will give you a CV and it's to me, sometimes I look at it and think, that's a list that. They've just written a list of every product they can think of under the sun.
Yeah.
And every version under the sun, and you're like, well, what does that actually mean? Mm-hmm. As you're saying, if you want them to come in, you want them to be able to script, or you want them to be able to work in certain parts of your environment, you can test that, and obviously you can then use it to upskill them, can't you?
Well, absolutely. So, it's a cyclical process. So you hire best-in-class talent, and that reduces the risk of a bad hire, Kelly, like you just mentioned, of course. So you're getting great talent into the organisation, and then you're continually developing them to obviously help them enhance their skills individually, but also protect your business. And
also from a applicant going to a company that has a platform like Immersive Labs, that must be very attractive, because being able to upskill, have time to do training. I think me and Phil can both laugh about this with training, but a few months ago I had my diploma. I was meant to do it over a nice 6-month stretch, obviously crammed it in the 3 weeks before and got all the hours in and stayed up late. Training isn't always easy to do, and mine was exactly the same. It was tutorials, I had to go through my PowerPoints, take notes. None of it was practical until I actually did the exam. So I guess it's even nicer, isn't it, to be able to access that online, do it in your own time or within your business.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a gamified platform. It's an engaging tool, and actually we see that a lot of the usage comes out of hours. So even though some organisations mandate usage and they use it as part of objective setting and one-on-ones and performance reviews, which is great. Actually, we see that our users just go and proactively upskill themselves because it's enjoyable and it's engaging, and they'll often do that at weekends or in the evenings when they're off
Have
work.
you seen that accelerate because of COVID?
Yeah, so usage has certainly gone up, and sort of out of hours usage has certainly gone up recently as well. And another benefit of the platform, of course, is it is just browser based, so you can access it from anywhere actually. So
that's good to know.
And I think that the platform also does team building exercises, doesn't it? And scenario based stuff, so you can actually do stuff to bring your whole team together and make them work together.
Yeah, that's right. So we've talked about traditional immersive labs, if you like, and in terms of upskilling and training, but actually we're a lot more than that now. We're more of an enterprise platform, so there's lots of things that we do. So we talked about sort of screening and bringing best-in-class talent into organisations and continually upskilling them, in the sense that cyber is a challenge for everyone in an organisation actually. So it's not just the responsibility now of the technical teams to protect an organisation, it's the responsibility of all of us, right, to make sure that we're cyber aware and the obvious stuff like phishing emails and making sure we're not clicking on dodgy links. But actually, in the event of a breach, and this is what we're seeing, companies spend millions and millions of dollars a year on protecting their organisation and installing firewalls and antivirus and all the rest of it. But breaches are happening almost daily, and we see it in the news quite regularly, don't we? And quite significant breaches. And what that means actually in the event of a breach is that lots of different business units and stakeholders in an organisation are required in the event of a breach. So what we allow organisations to do, very much like we allow individuals to get hands-on with the technical side of cyber, we allow HR teams, C-level decision makers, executive teams get hands-on in the event of a crisis. So we'll actually run through a real-life scenario that requires that input. So we've been breached. What do we do? Do we switch the network off? Do we inform the public? Do we inform our customers?
Yeah, because that was interesting. When we were talking about it earlier in the week, is that you actually you ask questions like, "Oh, do you tell the press? Do you not tell the press?" And then it gives you a scenario of what would happen if you had done or what you had said. And I think that's quite interesting because I think gone is the day that it's just the IT department and you have to worry that IT just worry about it. And I think we've learned that a lot internally with going through everything with our ISO accreditation. It's down to all of us. It's down to all us walking away from our laptops and making their locks and all that sort of stuff. You can't just be a bit tunnel visioned that it just comes unfortunately down to Phil. It's all of us that have to be part of it. But I guess if you do have a breach, it would then all of us would be involved because you would have to discuss that. And I don't know, for me, I wouldn't know how to do that. or what the right decision
Absolutely.
would be.
And what are the repercussions of those decisions as well? Like you talked about customer confidence and share price and all those things, and they would be affected in the event of a crisis based on how you handle that scenario.
Yeah.
If we look at the Travelex hack, which happened a few years ago, their response was really quite delayed, actually. I mean, I think it took them a couple of days to get a message on the website. I think the initial message was, we're down for planned maintenance. Well, of course they weren't. They'd been hacked. I didn't say anything for 2 days to anybody. And then eventually through Twitter, they announced that they'd been hit by a virus. And that response was concerning and poor, right, generally, because that really does create a sense of panic. Customers must have been thinking, well, what's going on here? Obviously, there's financial institutions. So in terms of personal data, it was quite significant.
An interesting choice that they chose Twitter.
Yeah, well, exactly.
That's quite a major thing to do, but I'll just tweet it.
Just tweet it. Yeah, we'll get it by virus. Yeah,
get the social media team to tweet that out. That'd be all right.
Yeah, get the likes
You can deal with the comments.
Well, exactly. And but if you haven't been through that scenario, and they were obviously caught cold, obviously, and it did happen as well on, I think it was New Year's Eve. So the obviously team were probably off and. They were really, really under pressure to respond, but that response just wasn't wonderful.
I just feel for that poor social media team that would have just got all the reaction and they'd have been like, "Wah! I have no idea what to do." That must have been awful for them. Okay, so I like that. That it means that we're all involved and we're all part of it and we're all solving the problem, I guess.
Exactly. And, we talk about measuring capability, and that allows organisations to measure the knowledge, skills and judgment of people right across the organisation. In fact, we did an exercise recently internally, actually, at Immersive Labs, and we all got together face-to-face, which was quite nice a few weeks ago. We ran through a scenario and we all voted on what we thought was the correct decision to make and gave justification for that. And that allowed Immersive Labs as an organisation to measure us in terms of our decision-making capability.
How did you do?
We did quite well, thankfully.
That's good.
It would be a bit embarrassing if...
He wouldn't have brought it up otherwise.
No, I was going to say, how did you guys do?
Yeah.
And so if people we could, for example, internally here, we could do that as a team exercise
Absolutely.
all together.
Yeah, so you can run them as teams, and we're talking about running that event. That's how it could work. Or you can go away and do them individually. You can play them as certain individuals. So you could play from a technical standpoint. You could play from the CEO's perspective. You could play from a comms and PR perspective.
Oh, so you can play as different people as a team.
That's right. Yeah.
So I could be Phil for the day.
You could. The power is in your hands.
That'd be very dangerous, wouldn't it? Switch it all on. Let everybody in, it's fine. Okay, so you touched just a bit on that about the event. So I had a bit of a brainstorming session this week, and we were thinking, I quite like the fact that you collaborate and could work together. So we're thinking in the new year of actually offering this to our customers or even potentially prospects that they want to come in and actually work as a team, peer-to-peer, and do that voting scenario, seeing what they get over it. Obviously, we'll throw in some food with that to make it... I mean, for me, it kind of reminds me of traditional kind of murder mystery dinner party kind of style, but we're cybersecurity it up. So what would... Because you've gone through that, what would that look like? What would they learn from it? Because I believe you get like a report as well after that, which is quite vital.
Yeah, that's right. So there's lots of different scenarios that you could be thrown into, and we make them, real world. So we will base them on real life examples of breaches that have happened. So you can be thrown into a scenario that a business has had to face in real life, and see how you can react in that way. And that will have a number of repercussions, like we touched on. So you can see how your decision making affects the pathway of that journey. So every decision you make will affect the ultimate outcome. So what does your customer confidence levels look like? How's your share price been affected? How has your business impact been affected? So you can collaborate and come together and justify why you think that a decision A may be the right path to go down, which is great because it evokes conversation. And actually, there's always a lot of disagreement, and that's part of the learning. And we will advise, of course, what was a strong answer and actually what was quite a weak answer and why, and the justification for that, so you can understand why that was maybe the wrong thing to do or not the best thing to do. So there's lots and lots of learning that you can have from that experience, but it's fun and it's engaging and allows organisations, like I say, to understand where their staff are from a decision-making perspective.
I was going to ask this from a training. Are you finding like a good practice of how often you should be using the platform? Like, should you be touching base on it 10 minutes once a week or an hour a month? Is that, or do you think that's personal?
So it all depends, really. I mean, so we release new labs every single week. So our content is continually expanding. I think when I joined the business about 18 months ago, we had a few hundred labs. We've now got over 1,000. So the number of, and when I say labs, I mean a practical hands-on experience. So a challenge, essentially. And that's in lots of different areas, right? Whether you're a red teamer or a blue teamer, for example. So what we allow organisations to do actually is set objectives based on, and we're going to talk about sort of coverage on the MITRE framework, but based on where your weaknesses are as an organisation, because we give you that view of capability, you can identify where your areas of risk are as an organisation. So you might say, right, okay, we don't have strength here in these particular techniques or these particular areas. This is something we really need to improve and upskill on. So you could go and set objectives for individuals, for teams, to go and get them skilled up in those particular areas and ultimately reduce your risk as a business, because you can see where's my coverage, where are my gaps, and how do we fill those gaps. So it all depends really on where you are as a team.
But I guess kind of what we do internally is kind of like risk matrices and stuff like that, and knowing where we need to improve. I guess you can control the training in some elements to make sure that that's part of your control and that you're training people appropriately. So I guess as a company you can kind of sit there with your objectives and what you want to achieve a year, 5 years, and I guess can help you with your recruitment plan.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because you may think you need someone else, but actually there may be untapped talent that you don't know about, or
Correct.
Someone doesn't know they're good at that thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, when you talk to CISOs and you ask them, where are you strong? Like you've got your teams in place. Like where are their capabilities? Like where are their strengths? Where are their weaknesses? And it's actually really hard for them to answer that question without a platform like Immersive Labs, because you can look at certification, like I said at the beginning, but you've got no way to evidence capability. You've got no way to continually exercise it. Really, you could go on a SANS course, for example, but how do you evidence that practical experience? Yes, you've gone and sat in a classroom for a week, but
what have they actually taken in?
Exactly.
Yeah.
What
but
have
also,
you learned?
how do you react as a human being, right? Because you don't actually know how you react until you're in a scenario. Going on the plane flight or a car accident or any major thing, anything that happens as a human being, it's the fight or flight thing, isn't it? You don't actually know how you would react. And even you could be the most trained person, and they've known it, haven't it, where like, doctors are not actually there and something happens out of their environment and they freeze or forget. I guess it could be the same for talent in cybersecurity. If you had a major attack, you could probably either just close your computer or...
And we've been talking about how hard it is to get cybersecurity people. The best way of doing it is to train up and bring through your internal talent.
Yeah, exactly.
So as soon as you've got somebody that's got an interest in it, you can start training them up, bringing them through. That'll help your staff retention and skills. Because obviously if you bring someone in externally, you don't know how long they're going to stay, they might move on. But if you bring someone that's been working in your business for a while and start training them up, it really does help bring those people through. It's
really interesting you mentioned that, actually, Phil. So we had a story recently from an existing customer, and they had a chap in their organisation who was the cleaner, but he'd always wanted to move into IT. And he saw that there was a position available in the IT team, and he applied for the position, but of course he didn't have any relevant experience. So the organisation allowed him to have access to Immersive Labs and allowed him to upskill himself in the areas that would be relevant to that role, which he did over a period of weeks. He completed a number of labs that were specific to the role, and actually ended up getting the job and moving from a cleaner into the IT team, which is just fantastic. So they didn't need to go and hire someone external. You can upskill and retain talent internally.
And he probably got that cleaning job, didn't he? Because he wanted to be there. He wanted to be close to that. It was the closest thing he could get to it.
Yeah, to that environment.
I really love that.
Yeah,
that's a really nice story.
So it just shows, that it's a great way also to identify talent, because you can give access to anyone in the organisation to the platform, and actually if you see that someone's got real capability, then fantastic. Like, let's expose that, mate.
Because I've seen it a lot of times where people get stuck on a service desk. They'll come in and do a first line service desk role, and they're dying to get into second, third line, and they just it's trying to make that leap, because it is quite a leap sometimes for people. So by using something like this, they can really put the head above everyone else and say, look, I'm doing this work.
But it allows you to empower yourself, doesn't it? You can do as many labs as you want, I guess.
Completely.
There's no cap.
Absolutely.
So you could do as many as you want.
At the end of the day, you want people that can deliver, not people that have a piece of paper.
Exactly, and that's the whole reason we were founded. And initially it was around upskilling, which of course it is, and now it's about reduction of risk. I mean, that's ultimately what organisations want. They want to reduce the risk and then the impact if they were to be breached. So that's what we allow organisations to do. It's identify where they need to invest, they need to hire, they need to strengthen and focus.
Has anyone moved from marketing to technical?
You fancy it?
No, I think I'd be terrible, but you never know. In a year's time, I might come to Phil and be like, "Oh, can do this
I've
now."
done my labs. Yeah, I'm ready. Yeah.
I think it's good. That's good. And obviously, you guys have kind of linked it all to the MITRE attack framework. I mean, we talk about the MITRE attack framework a lot, and they'll say, "Look, this will tell you this is the same technique an attacker's using, and it's this item on the MITRE attack framework." But do people really look at what's behind that and what those techniques actually are? Whereas your platform will say, look, this MITRE attack framework number, these are all the things that are happening, and it'll explain to people what that actually is?
Yeah, that's right. So in the platform, there's essentially a matrix of the framework, and you can click into each individual technique, and that will take you to a series of challenges, a series of labs that are directly related to that technique. So you can get hands-on with the real specifics, and actually, as I've mentioned, we can do what we call a RAG matrix, right? Red, amber, green. So as a CISO or a leader in cybersecurity in an organisation, you can get that high-level holistic view of where are my strengths in relation to MITRE and where do we need to focus, and it will just show you visually. We've got loads of green, fantastic, we're strong, we've got a number of individuals, and you click and see who that is, but actually these are our areas of weakness, and therefore we either need to upskill, hire, train people to ensure that we've got coverage across all those different techniques.
Another thing, could you also, I guess you could see if someone wasn't engaging, that potentially they're not inspired, or it's kind of the other way as well, couldn't you? You could probably see if someone's really accelerating, that. Yeah. But also if someone started off accelerating and they're dipping, then you may be able to pick up from a HR. I'm thinking from different departments. From a HR perspective, it would probably be a bit of a flag of that person's not happy, or why aren't they trying to extend their breadth of knowledge, or maybe they want a career change or something.
Absolutely.
I guess it can help you with that element as well.
Yeah, absolutely, and allow you to dig into those areas and use them as a conversation for career development as well.
Yeah.
This is where you've been fantastic. Actually, this is what we've seen a trend, or we've seen it. We've seen a dip. Why is that? Is that something that's not enjoyable? Is there something else going on? And absolutely, delve into those sorts of things.
Okay, so secure coding is a constraint in the development process, and this is kind of another part of the platform that I'm hoping you can explain a bit more to me.
So we've sort of touched on bringing people into an organisation and screening for talent and capability and reducing unconscious bias and all that good stuff, and then upskilling individuals as we go, and then battle testing decision making holistically in the event of a crisis, so involving the CEO, involving execs, involving other business units. The sort of final pillar, if you like, of our platform is around what we call application security, and actually getting engineers and development teams to shift left and really think about cybersecurity during that coding and development phase. Okay. So typically it's not really thought of from those teams, right? Cyber is an afterthought, cybersecurity is an afterthought. So what we allow organisations to do is very similar actually to our sort of traditional cyber pro model. It allows developers to be dropped into a live code environment and actually start to identify vulnerabilities, fix vulnerabilities in a safe environment to ensure that when they are coding, they're doing it in a safe and secure manner that will ultimately reduce the number of vulnerabilities that are released in code.
And that must be huge for the development of apps and things.
Yeah,
and fintech and all the e-tech stuff now, because you can do your blood levels now, can't you, with apps and things on you and stuff like that. They've got a lot of data on you.
Absolutely,
Personal data.
Yeah, and if you do have applications and websites and various forms of communicating to your customers, and you're constantly developing and releasing that, then actually if you release vulnerable code, there's a cost associated to business to go back and fix that, right? So you've got to go right back to the start. You've got to go in and fix it and re-release, which comes at a cost from a time and money perspective. So if you can get those developers thinking about cybersecurity and coding securely early on, you're going to reduce those, which is good.
One example, not necessarily about security, but one example of coding that I knew a coder, and there was a big bit of code that went through and it said, look, and back in the days of dongles in the back of PCs, and it went through and said, check this algorithm from this dongle, is this particular long key? But then in the code further up, it says, do you want to check for the dongle? Just change it to no, and it went through pass without it. So, it's about making sure that, things are done securely, you know what I mean? So, done right from the get-go.
From the very beginning. Okay, so obviously, I think this all sounds very exciting, and I'm going to do lots of training. But if someone hasn't worked with you guys before and are thinking this is a really good for their company, can you trial it? How does someone start the process of looking into using
absolutely. So, contact Core to Cloud. We obviously partner with you guys and have done for a while. So what we normally allow organisations to do is have access to the platform for a proof of value and a trial period. So what we would do is actually work with that organisation to understand what pains and challenges they currently have. Typically that's around not understanding capability in their organisation, not having that continuous view on capability and not being able to improve it and enhance it over time. So we would work with the organisation to understand their challenges and pains and then translate that to the platform. How can we help you solve those challenges and pain? How can we give you the data and the analytics that you need to have confidence in your capability? And that's the important thing. That's what organisations generally want. Reduce risk and have confidence in their capability. And then we'll allow you to access the platform and of course you can get hands-on and use it as you normally would. And then we would come together at the end and say, right, this is what you wanted to achieve. Here's the evidence that hopefully we have achieved that. And go from there. And then we tend to see organisations then subscribe for 12, 24, 36 months.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much.
You're welcome.